There are no watches, warnings, or advisories out anywhere around the state today. Blank everywhere here. No areas illuminated. Panhandle, South Central Alaska, Alaska Peninsula, even out west here. Pretty good conditions with not too bad weather-wise. In fact, high pressure will be taking over the Bering Sea here tonight into tomorrow. On satellite imagery, not much to look at. Got a system here approaching the south, another system approaching the southeast coast after it was earlier rain became more showery during the afternoon hours, started to taper off, but more moisture moving in now, and system up here over the central interior, both at the surface and aloft, kind of signified by this arc of cloudiness there up across the Brooks Range down into the Kobuk Valley. Otherwise, not a lot of clouds out here to the west, all kind of shifting off to the east there, and colder air coming southward here, picking up a lot of moisture. So widespread area of low and middle cloudiness here over the Bering Sea down into the Pribilofs, and that extending to some extent into the Aleutians. Then out to the west, you can see the cirrus shield ahead of the next frontal system, not a particularly strong system. That'll be bringing some precipitation back into the western Aleutians over the next 24 hours. Otherwise, again, a lot of clear skies here over the interior, areas of clear skies, that is, and down into the southeast Bering Sea here, some good clearing there as well into, looks like Kodiak Island, and a few sun breaks in Cook Inlet today. Otherwise, on the chart, areas of snow showers. This trough here that swung northward, kind of the remnants of the front that pushed into the Panhandle yesterday, which is off to the east now, but good southwest flow with the low center here south of Resurrection Bay, keeping showers going today over the Panhandle, and more moisture on the increase here for the northern Panhandle with another surge of cloudiness moving in there. Same thing for the North Gulf Coast, scattered rain and snow showers, but much drier out here to the west with a little increase in the northerly winds now, kicking up to 25 to 35 miles an hour out of the north, mainly out of the north here, down across the Pribilofs. Alaska Peninsula, about the same thing, 25 gusts 35 there for the Alaska Peninsula. On into the eastern Aleutians, and colder air riding in on those northerly winds, so mostly temperatures near or below freezing, and snow showers falling, mostly on the Bering Sea side of the peninsula there. Otherwise, high pressure, drying it out, light winds, dry conditions here for the western Bering Sea on up into the Russian Far East. But we'll see tonight that next front gets onto the chart here, but still west of Shimianatu, but that'll begin to increase the chances of precipitation there with a little bit of an increase in the wind, but nothing too significant. Otherwise, another surge of snow showers coming southward here with the cold air picking up the moisture out over the open Bering Sea waters as it flows off the ice edge there. So look for periods of light snow for the Pribilofs, winds north 15, maybe 25 miles an hour, and in toward Bristol Bay and along the southwest coast, looking at north winds maybe 20, gusts 35. Could see some gusts up around 40 to 45 miles an hour for the Alaska Peninsula through the normally windy areas and channels in that area with snow showers or just persistent light snow on the Bering Sea side, snow showers on the Pacific side, and another trough keeps a chance of snow showers in over south central Alaska tonight, especially the Matanuska Valley into southern Copper River Basin, Prince William Sound, North Gulf Coast, rain and snow showers, drying out though over the Panhandle as the next system begins to gather and move northeastward here. Up in the north, high pressure over the north slope, light winds there with not too bad, well, definitely dry conditions there. Temperatures still below zero tonight up in that area and areas of the west and northwest part of the state. But for tomorrow, we'll see this low track north, a little bit to the north. The front really kind of pushing out a little farther there, possibly making landfall Prince of Wales Island in the late afternoon hours, but that'll pick up the the winds and rain with some rain and snow showers up to the north as the heavier precipitation moves into the south. Chance of rain and snow showers for the North Gulf Coast. Chance of rain and snow showers Kenai Peninsula, Prince William Sound. Chance of snow showers Kodiak Island up into southern Cook Inlet, Kamishak Bay, Iliamna Lake area, as well as the Kuskokwim Valley, western Alaska Range. Should be dry up in the mid and upper Tanana Valley areas, 40-mile country there, and winds a little gusty through the passes of the Brooks Range, but nothing too significant there. Chance of snow showers for the eastern Arctic coast. Again, that widespread area of clouds and light snow showers here over the southern southeast Bering Sea down to the eastern Aleutians and Alaska Peninsula, and the front out west pushing rain now into the western Aleutians. We'll see on Saturday that really breaks up here as high pressure strengthens over the Bering Sea there, so a big area out here of dry conditions and light winds all the way from the Komodorskis right on up into the Bering Strait and the Chukchi Sea, but tighter gradient here persists with the colder air, bulk of the moisture as the upper level low kind of pulls back to the southwest here. So looking at north to northeast winds anywhere from 20 gusts, 40 miles an hour here along the southwest coast, and a little breezy over the inland areas as well, swinging around to the north-northwest there for the Alaska Peninsula with snow and snow showers continuing there. Drying out though for the Fox Islands. Could be a pretty nice day on Sunday and Sunday afternoon. Low pressure here in the Gulf of Alaska or southern Gulf of Alaska keeps a widespread area of rain showers and rain and snow showers going for the Panhandle and to a lesser extent for the North Gulf Coast. Just a chance of some isolated snow showers along the Alaska Range, a little bit more widespread scattered snow shower condition in the Copper River Basin, as well as the eastern Arctic coast. Lows tonight in the 30s for the southeast coast, 15 to 20 for the Susitna Valley, Copper River Basin, 0 to 10 for the Kuskokwim Valley, and 5 to 15 for Bristol Bay. Upper 20s, Kodiak Island, South or Kenai Peninsula, on up into say the Matanuska Valley, lows in the 20s. Highs tomorrow, upper 30s to lower 40s. Definitely lower 40s there in the Copper River Basin. Otherwise, colder out west here, highs in the 20s, near 20 for the highs for Bristol Bay, 35 Kodiak Island, and well into the 40s for the southeast coast. Lows back in the 30s again, 35 to 40 down here to the south for the Panhandle. Teens, Copper River Basin, 20s, South Central Alaska, Susitna Valley, and teens west of the mountains. Highs 40 to 45, a little warmer now, and for the Susitna, Matanuska Valley, Kenai Peninsula, lower 40s, Copper River Basin, and 45 to 50 for the Panhandle up to the north. Lows tonight still mostly below zero up there, coldest on the north slope. Highs a little warmer, 30 to 35, Fairbanks over toward Eielson Air Force Base, and upper 30s toward Eagle, or lower 30s Eagle, and either warming up to close to zero for the north slope and Arctic coast. Lows 5 to 15 central interior, 15 to 25 below for the north slope and Arctic coast, a little below zero out here toward the Bering Strait, and highs 30 to 35 again, Fairbanks eastward, and colder up to the north, staying below zero, a little below for the Arctic coast.
Welcome, I'm Crane Johnson, a hydrologist with the Alaska Pacific River Forecast Center, bringing you your 2023 Alaska Breakup Outlook on Thursday, April 13th. We're still about 2 weeks away from breakup on our larger rivers, and so now's the time to be flood ready. Check in with your family, check with your local community, know your plans, and be prepared. When we look at the flood potential each spring, we've got three primary components we consider. The first is snowpack, and so that's snow in the watershed upstream from your location. The second component is ice thickness and strength, and so that's ice in the river at your location. And then the third most important component are spring weather patterns, and those are the late April and early May temperatures. These control both the snowmelt rate and also the thermal condition and strength of the ice. It's the snowmelt rate and the strength of the ice that drive whether we have a mechanical breakup, where we have ice jams expected, usually associated with flooding, or a thermal breakup where the ice just melts in place and there's not enough snowmelt push to break up the ice. If we look at the first component, snowpack throughout Alaska and the Yukon Territory, we can see shades of blue that indicate above average snowpack throughout the state. Those shades of blue extend into the Yukon Territory with generally a slightly above average snowpack upstream from Eagle in the Yukon watershed. That trends to near normal in the upper headwaters of the Yukon watershed, the border of the Yukon Territory and BC province. Within Alaska, the above average trend continues with above average snowpack through central Yukon watershed, the Tanana watershed, and then the Copper River Valley watershed. Compared to last year, it's slightly less than last year. We don't have those record snowpack in interior that we had last year. If we look at the Matanuska-Susitna watershed, it's above average snowpack, with one exception is that the Chulitna watershed is one of the only spots in the state where we have below average measurements for snowpack. The Kuskokwim River, similar to last year, is above average snowpack. And then basins that drain the Kotzebue Sound have well above average snowpack, including the Kobuk River Basin and the Buckland River Basin. We can also see that most of Alaska, all across the North Slope, has limited data on the Seward Peninsula and also the lower Kuskokwim River Basin. One thing we can do to fill in those gaps is to look at modeled snowpack information, and we can see from the modeled data that we expect below average snowpack along the western North Slope that trends to above average snowpack along the eastern North Slope. We can also look at the Seward Peninsula with expected above average snowpack on the southern half, and then down at the lower end of the Kuskokwim and Yukon rivers, we've got below average snowpack, which also has been reported by local observers. If we look at the few snowpack records we had this year, we had Square Lake in the upper Susitna watershed, Tulsana River in the Copper River watershed, Taslina River site, and then also the Kenny Lake site had record snowpacks this year. If we look at ice thicknesses throughout Alaska, the first thing we can do is look at accumulated freezing degree days, and throughout the state, those were near normal for the 2022-2023 winter, and that's a measure of how cold it was this winter. We can also look at our measured ice thicknesses throughout the state, and generally throughout Alaska, we had normal to slightly below normal measured ice thicknesses. And this matches well with community observations that reported, in general, thinner than normal ice, especially as we head west in Alaska. We had 3 areas with unusual ice conditions this winter. The first is the upper Yukon River, where we had freeze-up ice jams that resulted in exceptionally high water levels at freeze-up and jumbled thicker than normal ice from Circle all the way up to the Yukon border. We also had high freeze-up conditions on the Buckland River with freeze-up jams that resulted in jumbled ice on the Buckland River. And then we had a freeze-up jam downstream from Aniak that resulted in jumbled ice downstream from Aniak. And so these are 3 areas that we'll watch closely this spring that have thicker than normal ice compared to the rest of the state that trends from normal to thinner than normal ice. As always in the spring, think twice before you head out on ice. Know your local ice conditions, check with somebody that's knowledgeable, but think twice as ice starts to lose strength this spring. The third factor that we'll consider are spring temperatures. As we've all experienced, it's been below average April temperatures so far. If we look at the 6 to 10 day CPC outlook, we've got chances for below average temperatures in southwest Alaska. That extends all the way up to Kuskokwim, all the way up the Yukon into the Yukon Territory. If we look a little further into the future, the CPC 8 to 14 day temperature outlook, we can expect below average temperatures to continue in southwest Alaska, but not as strong a signal. And those below average temperatures are expected to extend all the way up the Yukon River into the Yukon Territory. If we look a little closer at a single site, Fairbanks, Alaska, we can see we've had well below average temperatures for the last week, and then both the forecast and model guidance show continued below average temperatures as we extend into the next 10 days. The concern we have is that if these below average temperatures extend into May and then we have a sustained rapid warm-up, that'll increase the flood threat and likely occurrence of ice jams as rivers break up. If we look at our 2023 conditions, we're trending towards a dynamic breakup. That's when we can have ice jams possible. Chances of flooding are increased. A A thermal breakup would be when there's low snowpack, thinner, weaker than normal ice, and those are years when we don't have any significant ice jams. But based on the three factors we've considered, we're trending towards a dynamic breakup. And the spring weather conditions, April temperatures and May temperatures will really drive where this falls in terms of dynamic or thermal. Usually each year is a mix of both. If we look at our flood threat throughout Alaska, in general, based on snowpack, ice, and temperatures, we've got an above-average flood potential for most areas of Alaska. The North Slope is average flood potential, and then the extreme lower reaches of the Yukon and Kuskokwim River are average flood potential. If we look at our village breakup map, we've got 3 sites with moderate to high flood potential. That's Circle on the Yukon River, Buckland on the Buckland River, and Aniak on the Kuskokwim River. And then other sites that have moderate or low to moderate flood threat, primarily due to the ice jam threat on both the Yukon and the Kuskokwim River. If we look at breakup timing this year, generally 3 to 4 days late in eastern Alaska, 4 to 6 days late in western Alaska, and then equal chances of or average breakup dates on the North Slope. Thanks for joining us. As always, keep watch on your local river conditions. You can check our website for the latest conditions. You can also use the Fresh Eyes on Ice, a citizen observer research program out of UAF, and view your local river with daily updates. As always, we appreciate any local observations. You can email those into us or give us a call at 1-800-847-1739 with your local river conditions. Thank you.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Okay, for flying weather Friday morning, areas of marginal VFR, central interior, southward here over the southeast part of the state, on into Gulf of Alaska and into the Panhandle, as well as Kenai Peninsula, Cook Inlet areas, and Matanuska Valley. Then some VFR out here to the west, Bristol Bay on up to the northwest across the Bering Strait, Seward Peninsula. Lots of marginal VFR, pretty widespread over the Bering Sea here, Pribilofs, all of the Aleutians from the Alaska Peninsula out to Shimei and Attu. And you can see some IFR starting to build just west of the western Aleutians there, which advances eastward with that next system pushing in to about Kiska Island there by tomorrow afternoon. Otherwise, marginal VFR across the southern Bering Sea, becoming VFR for St. Paul, St. George, and then good VFR all the way up into the Chukchi Sea. VFR Bristol Bay, Kodiak Island, at least part of the central interior. Marginal VFR there from the Yukon River up to the eastern Arctic coast across the Brooks Range. Lots of marginal VFR. Pretty marginal day here across southern Alaska tomorrow, North Gulf Coast, Prince William Sound. Kodiak Island, mostly VFR except the east side, and improving here over the northern southeast coast. But back to the marginal VFR, all the Panhandle for Saturday morning. Copper River Basin, Matanuska Susitna Valley into Prince William Sound, North Gulf Coast, including Yakutat, all VFR, Northern Cook Inlet as well. Western Alaska Range, Kuskokwim Valley, into the Kuskokwim Delta there, some eastern Kuskokwim Delta, marginal VFR up into the central interior. Got some IFR now for the central eastern North Slope and the Arctic coast. Northern Bering Sea, same, pretty nice here in the Chukchi Sea. Good VFR all through this area. Almost down to the Pribilofs, but not quite. And then that IFR zone getting hung up here over the southwest Bering Sea mostly, but marginal VFR all the way up to the Alaska Peninsula. That holds pretty much through Saturday afternoon here, although it kind of dissipates out a little bit, but hangs over the Alaska Peninsula, all of the Aleutians, and then from Amchitka Island westward to the Komodorskis, IFR, and staying really nice here, VFR for the Pribilofs, right on up into the Chukchi Sea again, most of the western interior, a little bit of marginal VFR through here, up to the north there to the Arctic coast, and here from just east of Cape St. Elias there into the Panhandle. Looks pretty marginal for Saturday afternoon. Passes all marginal just about here for Anatuvik and Adigan. Marginal VFR for the Brooks Range there, and Lake Clark and Merrill. Marginal VFR as well. Same forecast for rainy as well as windy. And moving eastward there to... give it another click. There we go. Isabel, marginal VFR. And a pretty marginal day for Mentasta as well as Tanita in the Matanuska Valley, marginal VFR there. And for Portage, same forecast, marginal VFR for the day Friday. And Chilkoot and White, early marginal VFR, and then maybe by mid-morning becoming VFR, and that'll last through the afternoon once it does clear out. And the freezing levels, not much to show here, even the surface way down to the south, well south of Kodiak Island at its northernmost extent there, and even south of the Queen Charlottes. Otherwise, a little bit warmer air out here, 2,000 to 4,000 feet over the western Aleutians due to that southerly flow ahead of that next system coming in from the west. And so just from there, moving on to the icing chart, we'll see some increasing icing threats here, maybe some isolated moderate rime icing coming into Shimiat 2, possibly pushing to Kiska Island there, but most of the moisture up to the north here over the western Bering. Icing free here to the west coast, most of interior Alaska, and then some moisture bringing a possibility of some occasional isolated moderate rime icing to the North Gulf Coast, Prince William Sound, Kenai Peninsula, Cook Inlet, and then down here, that stronger storm here, that'll push in some isolated moderate rime icing into the southern panhandle in the afternoon, and that'd be about the best chance of seeing any significant icing would be down that way tomorrow. Otherwise, big upper level low here at 33,000 feet, big trough over interior Alaska into the northeast Pacific, 80 to 110 knot northwest winds there across the Bering Sea and the eastern Aleutians. 9,000 feet, we've got 60 knot winds here just south of Dixon Entrance, otherwise 40 to 50 knots along the southeast coast with this stronger system here off to the southwest. Northerlies about 60 knots here along the Yukon Delta coast and Nunivak Island, and 55 knots at 9,000 feet over the central Aleutians. And just jumping on into turbulence, moderate turbulence here at Alaska Peninsula, areas of the northwest interior, and the Panhandle.
Look, the lovely Lyrids are illuminating with fulmination. Hi, Trace here, my fellow stargazers, and this week is the Lyrid meteor shower. The moon sets early, so it should be a good show this year. Let me show you how to see it. Hit the darkness after midnight and look east for a very bright star. That's Vega in Lyra the Harp. That's where the shower gets its name, Lyra Lyrids. Bring chairs, blankets, warm drinks, and a snack. It'll take 20 to 30 minutes for your night vision to max out, so avoid screens while you look for meteors that are burning up in our atmosphere. The shower peaks on April 23rd, but you'll have a chance to see meteors all week. Astronomically, the Lyrids can drop 20 meteors per hour at their peak. That said, there are sometimes Lyrid fireballs, but can cast shadows and leave behind smoke trails that linger for minutes. So relax, enjoy the show, and keep looking up.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. Well, the next system coming up toward the southern southeast coast is going to bring gale warnings here along the coast of Prince of Wales Island. East winds 35 knots, small craft advisories here for the central coast. Winds out of the east increasing to 25 to 30 knots, and winds east 15 to 25 knots on the north coast. Much lighter winds over the central and northern inner channels, kind of a variable direction there from Lynn Canal to Stevens Passage at about 10 knots. Seas only 2 feet. Southeast winds picking up to 20 knots in the afternoon for Clarence Strait, with seas building toward 9 feet. And for Saturday, southeast winds 25 to 30 knots for the south coast. Central and north coast, east-northeast winds 20 to 25 knots. Southeast 20 for Clarence Strait, southeast 10 Stevens Passage, Lynn Canal northeast at 15 with seas running 3 feet, but up to 11 feet there for Clarence Strait. And for Prince William Sound tomorrow, east winds at about 15 knots with 3-foot seas. East-southeast winds for the eastern North Gulf Coast at about 20 knots. Northeast 15 for the western North Gulf Coast. More of a breeze, though, for the Barren Islands out of the north at 30 knots with 9-foot or 6-foot seas. Northwest 30 for Kamishak Bay and Cook Inlet. Looking at northerly winds for the day Friday at 15 to 20 knots. And then for Saturday, Cook Inlet, north winds 10 to 15 knots, seas down to 3 to 4 feet. Northwest 25 for Kamishak Bay, north 25 there for the Barren Islands. Western North Gulf Coast, northeast at 20. Eastern North Gulf Coast, east-northeast winds 25 knots, and light northerly breeze for Prince William Sound at about 10 knots, seas down to 2 feet. Kodiak Island, small craft advisories Friday, north to northwest winds 25 to 30 knots. Small craft advisories also for Bristol Bay and the Alaska Peninsula for northwest winds 25 to 30 knots in these areas, with seas running 4 to 10 feet. And for Saturday, not much change here. Northwest winds 30 knots for the Alaska Peninsula, northwest 25 for Bristol Bay. Kodiak Island, north to northwest winds 25 to 30 knots, seas as high as 9 feet. And for the eastern Aleutians, tomorrow, small craft advisories, northwest winds 25 to 30 knots. Adak and Atka, northwest winds at about 20 knots, and then becoming more lighter and variable here, especially around Adak out toward Amchitka, turning south, increasing to 25 knots for the western Aleutians. And for Saturday, east-southeast winds out here west of Adak at 25 to 30 knots. Otherwise, central Aleutians, east winds at 20 knots. And for the Fox Islands, north to northwest winds, 30 knots. For the southwest coast tomorrow, brisk wind advisories, northwest winds 25 to 30 knots, north 25 for St. Lawrence Island. And Bering Sea here, St. Matthew Island, St. Paul, St. George, all looking at north winds at 25 knots. And for Saturday, St. Paul and St. George still north at 25, but northwest 20 for St. Matthew Island, and north 25 Yukon Delta coast up to St. Lawrence Island, a little stronger here northwest at 30 knots south of Nunivak Island. And for the central and eastern Beaufort Sea coastline tomorrow, light north winds at about 10 knots. Otherwise, north winds 15 knots on the western Arctic coast. Chukchi Sea, especially from Cape Thompson to Wales, looking at a gale warning tomorrow at 35 knots from the north. And then those lighten up on Saturday, Wales to Cape Thompson, northwest 25, western Arctic coast, winds 10 to 15 knots, really light for the central coast there, down to 5 knots from the north, and northeast at 10 knots on the east side. For tonight, again, high pressure, making for light winds up there for the north slope out to the Arctic coast. Still pretty breezy here, gusty north winds, picking up snow out over the open water, and so areas of snow showers here for the eastern Aleutians, Alaska Peninsula, Pribilofs. Chance of snow showers south central Alaska, rain and snow showers north Gulf Coast. Drier for the Panhandle. Next system spreads wind and rain with the gales developing there around Prince of Wales Island in the afternoon. And lighter winds, lighter precip up to the north. Still a chance of snow showers here southern Alaska. Better chance, but light snow showers out over the southeast Bering Sea. Still dry and below normal temperatures up to the north. Next front spreading some small craft advisory level winds and rain into the western Aleutians. Then that falls to pieces on Saturday as it runs into this big area of high pressure over the north central Bering Sea. And less in the way of snow showers southern Alaska, wet for the Panhandle and eastern North Gulf Coast.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.